Good morning to you, Terry Abramson.
Hello, Michael. It's good to be back.
It's good to see you. You know, the thing I remember most about you is that you did a play, which I never saw, called Karma Sutra. And Karma Sutra was, Kate McCammon was the lead in it, and she was on the show. I think you were too, talking about the play. Are you still doing that play? Is it still out and about?
We went on hiatus last year. I had 4 shows up, and I had to make sure that I didn't neglect the other 3. Kama Sutra will be back in 2012, and right now we're working on taking it to Las Vegas.
And you did like a Hanukkah comic book.
Yes, well, it was kind of a cross between a comic book and Mad Magazine and a fable. It was called Hanukkah Saves Hanukkah.
Hanukkah Saves Hanukkah.
Yes, and it's a completely new and never before heard retelling of the story of Hanukkah, featuring Chuck Berry and Leonard Cohen and the Beatles doing that Hanukkah classic 8 Days a Week.
So that was like a comic book. I know it was in the Heartland General Store for a while.
We'll be back with it this year.
I had no idea about what a talented fellow you were. You came in after those other 2 things, after Karma Sutra and the Hanukkahs, and you handed me a book called In the Belly of the Blues. And it's got Muddy Waters and who's that guy? One of the Rolling Stones.
Keith Richards.
That's Keith Richards.
And you can see Mick Jagger in the back.
Mick Jagger's in the back. A little bit of Ronnie Wood, and this was probably at the Quiet Night.
This was at the Quiet Night in 1978.
I remember when they came there, and I think the Stones showed up, but you couldn't get in. You were lucky enough to get in. But this book is filled with photographs of Chicago blues musicians, other blues musicians, some rockers like George Thouroughgood of the Delaware Destroyers. And why don't you tell us a little story? The introduction of the book says that you ended up at the Quiet Night. You thought that the performers were actually some people working there. You found out they were the actual talent. Tell us about that night. What introduced you to the blues?
The first time I was at the Quiet Night, it was about 9 years before the night with the Muddy and the Stones. A friend of mine, Abe Trieger, calls me up, and I was in college, and he says, this guy, you know anything about the blues? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, this guy, Howlin' Wolf, he lives in town. He's supposed to be a blues singer, and he does these Rolling Stones songs. Why don't we go see him? So I said, sure. We go down to the Quiet Night. There's maybe 8 people in the place. We're underage. They put us off to the side behind this rope, and these 6 old guys are sitting next to the stage before the show starts in these $2 white Woolworth short-sleeve shirts, and they looked like the cleanup crew from Abramson High School, where I'd gone to high school. And I was wondering, well, what are these guys doing here? And then you hear the announcer say, ladies and gentlemen, the Howlin' Wolf Band. And these guys get up, and that was the band. And I see Howlin' Wolf up there, and he was probably about 55 at the time, this big old black guy. And I never saw anybody sing like that. I was never moved by music like that. And after watching him for about 30 seconds, I could see this is where Mick Jagger got his moves. This is where rock and roll comes from. And as I say in the book, I was struck by smokestack lightning, and I became pretty much a big fan of the blues, and it carried through through my college years. I was part of a group called Blues Power that produced the first blues show at the University of Illinois, when the school, who was having heroes of mine like Jefferson Airplane and the Temptations and the Rolling Stones, wouldn't give us money to do a blues show, so we raised our own money, brought down Hound Dog Taylor and a guy named Jim Brewer, who's played across the street many times, as you know.
Down at the No Exit. Actually, the first musical event I ever produced was up at Lake Forest College, and I had Blind Jim Brewer. I had met these guys through the Record Mart down there on Wabash Avenue. And, that has its own history and all that. But it was quite an exciting time for me just meeting these old blues guys, too. Otis Spann, yes, and some of these guys.
Great, the blues pianist of
well,
Chicago Blues.
You did, in addition to your first night there at the Quiet Night, you ended up getting really involved with a number of musicians. This book you have out, which is called In the Belly of the Blues, which is sold out already. I know you're going to
sold out, but we'll be taking orders for the next printing at the throughout our run at the Heartland.
Well, let's just tell everyone about the run at the Heartland. We've got these walls, and right now they have some Heartland history and some other works of art, but those are going to come down on Monday, and on Monday and Tuesday we're getting ready for your show. There's going to be an opening Tuesday night, and you'll be here, I don't know, a month or more.
Yes, we will. And it spans probably from, it's photographs from 1970 to 1985, starting with shots I took of Muddy Waters when I first met him at Alice's up on 950 West Wrightwood. And
that was the second Alice's. The first one was on Lincoln Avenue, and then they moved it over to the one you're talking about on Wrightwood, which is where I had my jaw broken when we were doing a Rising Up Angry People's Dance at Alice's, and we had Yama and the Karma Dusters, Wilderness Road, a number of these bands, and there was a guy who was, he was basically on downers, and I pushed him on the ice. I said, get him out of here before I used another word, but I meant the police come, and all of a sudden my jaw was like fireworks. He had sucker punched me from the rear, flying through the air. So I have fond memories of Alice's. And tell us a little bit about going on the road with these guys and how you ended up writing songs.
I was in 1973. I had moved to Boston to work with a guy named Ted Kurland, who has started a talent agency out there. And
now he still has a talent agency, because we get these emails, and I never pay much attention to all these big acts that we could get for deals. But now that I know you're connected to Ted Kurland, maybe we'll pay more attention to it.
Yes, you'll pay more attention, and knowing me, you may pay more for the acts too. but I came out to work with Ted, who was managing Pat Metheny and Gary Burton, and he said, a lot of blues guys, why don't you bring them out? And so the night I move out there, we go see Sonny Terry and Brian McGee at a place called Joe's Place in Cambridge, which was like the blues mecca of the Boston area. A young white kid is opening on guitar. He's got an acoustic guitar and a harmonica rack, and we thought this kid had more energy and more passion for the blues than anyone we'd ever seen. We wanted him to open some Hound Dog Taylor shows we had coming up a few weeks later. We called the bar the next day. We said, who is this kid? He said, the guy who answered said, his name's George Thouroughgood. He lives in Delaware with his mother. He's back there now. We get George on the phone in Delaware, tracked him down, Western Unioned him money to get for a train ticket. He comes back up to Boston, sleeps on our couch. He's teaching himself guitar on our toilet at night while we're asleep. We loaned him money to buy his first electric guitar. And I bring Jim Brewer out, who had been the acoustic act that opened for Muddy and Howlin' Wolf and all these guys at Alice's. And I book about 4 weeks of this mini Delta Blues Festival, and we're driving around one night, and Jim Brewer's talking about a woman, and he says, man, I surely like to plug into her. And I started making up this song. The men call me Muddy, the women call me, men call me Jim, the women call me Electric Man. When I plug into your socket, I'll charge you like no one else can. He says, that's good stuff, boy. You ought to give that to Muddy Waters. Muddy came to town. I give it to him, and he says, that's good stuff. You write that down. And Muddy wound up recording 3 of my songs, and so I kept working with George. We were managing George, and in 1974 I wrote the Boston Celtics fight song. We were big basketball fans. I'm still a Bulls fan, but the Celtics were in Boston. We wanted to get season tickets. We thought, how can we do it? We write this song, we have George record it, and we have a little bit of it to play right now. This is music history, George Thouroughgood doing Champs Again, the Boston Celtics fight song.
All right, I think we're going to take a musical break. We're not taking a musical break yet. Not yet.
Okay, well, we can come back to that.
We have some, we'll talk about something else while we get all this technical stuff worked out. We're having a great time here at the Heartland Cafe. We're up here on the stage where every Saturday morning we bring you another edition of Live from the Heartland. It's where we take the chain from the brain. It's where we get back into the people's game. It's where we move it from the lower level to the higher, from the shallower to the deeper, from the one-sided to the many, and from the abstract to the concrete. All power to the people, we say. And this is Michael James here with another edition of Live from the Heartland. And I'm talking to my friend Terry Abramson. How do you pronounce it?
It's Abramson.
Abramson, but it's got Abramson.
That's misspelled. My grandfather came to this country in 1912, opened a store. Our name was spelled Abramson. The sign for the store came spelled Abrahamson. We're the only Jews that came to this country and lengthened our name.
That was good, and I think we misspelled it in the Heartland E-News that went out.
Well, it looks right on the poster.
It's right on the poster.
Yeah,
I had you proofread that. I've been chastised many times over the years for not doing the final proofreading and getting it all straight, but with this one we did. Well,
we can talk about the Quiet Night if you want to.
I'd love to hear about the Quiet Night. That fellow Rich, I remember going there one time with a group of Rising Up Angry guys, and we were going to go talk to Corky Siegel. He had just played, and we kind of went up the stairs and we talked to him. And Corky's turned out to be a really close friend, and he's here at the Heartland often. He's played this stage. But then he said, "No, we're not going to do any benefits for any violence," because we were kind of angry in those days, and we were pretty militant. But the Quiet Night had that long stairs going up.
Yes.
And the thing I remember most was, what's the name of that Chicano band that out of L.A., Los Lobos? I remember being there for Los Lobos one night, and there was a knife fight broke out on the floor. And I don't see that kind of activity too often these days. I mean, maybe at some bars where cops go and they get in trouble for their activities. But around here, it's pretty peaceful. But the Quiet Night was the place. It was right at the corner of Sheffield and Belmont. And I think there's a hair salon there now. But some beautiful acts came through there. Jimmy Cliff, you couldn't get near the door. Tell us about the Quiet Night and your experiences there, Terry.
It was 1978, summer 78, and Muddy was in town, and I was usually around when Muddy was in town. And I traveled with him for a while. I had a receipt for a while of staying with him at the Plaza Hotel in New York. We had a room on the park. It said Muddy Waters, and it was $48 for a room on the park. But this night, I'm at the Quiet Night, and I'm backstage with Muddy between sets, and he says to me, "Don't say nothing, Bob, but the Stones are supposed to show up." And as you know, the Rolling Stones took their name from one of his songs, and he was their hero. And a few minutes later, in come Keith Richard and Ronnie Wood, and Keith Richard slinks across the room, walks up to Muddy Waters, drops to his knee, takes Muddy's hand, and kisses Muddy's hand. And that's an enduring image from that night for me. A couple minutes later, in come Mick Jagger, Jerry Hall, who was Mick's wife at the time, the model, and Charlie Watts. And the second set starts. Muddy had all these kids, a lot, from several different relationships. His her last litter was there, and they had all been sitting at the stage. These are little kids, maybe 10 and under, and they all went to sleep after the first set. So my girlfriend and I take their seats at the stage. Willie Dixon gets up and does a guest song with Muddy, and it was very dramatic because it was Willie's first public appearance after having his leg amputated at the knee for diabetes. So that was pretty dramatic in itself. He gets down and Muddy grabs the mic and says, "Where are my friends? Mick, Charlie, Keith, Ronnie, get up here." And as the Rolling Stones take the stage, it was like the ultimate science fair project. The temperature of the room shoots up 30 degrees in about 10 seconds. They take Muddy's band's instruments. Steady rolling Bob Margolin, Muddy's guitar player, stays on stage. The other guys sit down, and Charlie Watts, Mick Jagger, Ronnie Wood, and Keith Richard take the instruments and played for about 35 minutes and did a bunch of Muddy's classics, and it was unforgettable. Made more unforgettable by the fact that I did have my camera with me, and I shot a bunch of shots of Muddy and the Stones on stage, backstage, and they're all in this show. So you can come down here and you can see some rock and roll history.
How many pictures are you going to have in this show?
About 47.
47 pictures of Rockin Blues, mostly blues musicians, some rock and roll musicians.
We've got a lot of guys that aren't around anymore. Hound Dog Taylor, Big Walter Horton, Koko Taylor, Willie Dixon, Hubert Sumlin, the great guitarist from Howlin' Wolf's band. We've got Howlin' Wolf. We've got Eddie Shaw from Howlin' Wolf's band. We've got James Cotton.
Freddie King.
Freddie King, absolutely. Taj Mahal. Got some great shots of, we got a great shot of Muddy and Freddie King sitting in a van backstage at the Rhode Island Blues Festival, and the van has a shag rug dashboard and shag rug ceilings. There's some fun stuff in here. We've also got George Thouroughgood, acoustic and electric. We've got Johnny Winter, who produced Muddy's first album for Columbia Blue Skies, on which I have the longest song, Bus Driver. Hopefully we'll hear that. And that was my Grammy winner. We've also got... man, let's see. We've got a bunch of stuff
if
here.
If you are listening to this show and we talk about some of the tunes that Terry Abramson has written for some of these blues immortals, if you don't hear them today, they will be on the YouTube version that we'll have up at www.youtube.com/heartlandmedia. We usually enhance the broadcasts for the video presentations. Let me ask you a question, Terry Abramson. You took some great pictures. What kind of camera did you use?
Well, I'll show you one here. That's kind of a funny one. This is backstage with Muddy, or no, it's on stage with Muddy at Alice's. There's Bob Kessler from Delmark Records and Jay Ross.
Used to be at the Jazz Record Mark in the old days.
That's right. And this was taken with an Instamatic. You can see the date is still on the top of the snapshot there, November 1971. That would
be like using an iPhone these days.
It was. I actually took some pictures the night I saw Howlin' Wolf at the Quiet Night with a Polaroid swinger. Those no longer exist. They curled up into, they look like cigarettes now. But most of them I used a Minolta. For a few of them I used a little Minox, one of those little pocket cameras. I've got this shot of John Lee Hooker that I took when I wrote a Levi's commercial that he recorded.
We're going to take a short musical break. We're going to hear some of the tunes. I think the first one's by Muddy Waters.
The first one is Champs Again. That's George Thouroughgood doing the Boston
Celtics Thouroughgood doing the Boston Celtics fight song. We are Bulls fans, but we will listen to this. All right, here we are. We're back up here on the stage at the Heartland Cafe. It's Michael James. You're listening to Live from the Heartland. I've been talking with my friend Terry Abramson. He's got a great show called Rockin Blues, pictures of blues immortals, some rockers like George Thouroughgood. It will go up at the Heartland Cafe early this week. There'll be an opening on Tuesday night. And we're going to have Lisa Smith is going to come up. She's going to talk to people from the Underground Film Fest. And then a little bit later, we're going to have Mark Rivgovin on. He's going to talk about his dad, Milton, and photography, as well as a book he just did called The Day Will Come, Illinois Labor History. One parting word from you. What do you do these days?
Right now, I've been working on these blues photographs, and we'll have Hanukkah Saves Hanukkah is coming back up this fall. And, man, that's plenty.